related to my daughter Molly, whose birthday is tonight on this full moon. So this is a pretty auspicious occasion, and my whole family is here, which feels amazing. This is the Age of Sand. Once sat women, they sat here, then there. Some fastened bonds, some impeded an army, some unraveled fetters. Figure 1, the votive is inscribed recto, we carry with us what we need, and verso, we find what we need wherever we are. I'm stopping because I did this last time I read this, which is forget to tell you 2 really important things, because I was so excited about Molly's birthday. This is in different voices that are made clear in the typography, and that is not made clear when I read it aloud. So we just see what happens with that. The other thing is that I use the feminine sounding pronouns throughout, but in my clumsy attempt at kind of trying to expand my ideas about femininity, I changed all of the E's to X's as an expansive way of thinking about she and her. Dedicatory epistle. Here the earthing traced in fine-tongued writing, spectral tendrils, flowers of the ghost limbs, field-grounded ways of right and tender, drawing upon and drawing. Stay awake. 4 screens, some more alive than others. The comms and the rock and the old air and the techno and the keys and the touch and the flow and the tracks, and it's late and we're coming together and I'm waiting for you and I'm holding it together and I'm ready and getting in deep and holding it together and the center and setting a perimeter. Hands in parallel or shell-like, some kind of exoskeleton around this soft stuff. The green veins on the back of my hands. This flesh of thought here and of wonder, and it smells like starfish high of the Pacific. Lichen in November, northwest needle tips and crushed rose geranium. Here's a pixelated game from the 90s, predicting our now at an angle. Here is a palm on a standing stone. It's not too reductive to point to the control key and the escape key, but not necessarily in that order. Remember the future. One of the untranslatable words in the Dream Book or the Book of Sleeping Sight suggests not complex. It's understood that this is not precisely a web or a kind of knotted tapestry, though it is related. This is of a greater density, a greater complexity, comprising impossible knots and some kind of over-knotting, which of course then suggests under-knotting or an invisible knotted substrate, which is not in any way a tangle, not chaotic. The under-knotting, in fact, is evidence of order, even when order is not perceptible in the complex itself. Listening with the hairs on my forearms. This is the outsitting. And I'm feeling the way in the body, the way the big stacks used to beat as an external heart, in the feeling of air passing through nostril, every hair on my arm a feeler, subtle undulation of push, pull, waters, intracellular. Well, what is not the body? Exchange through this permeable membrane, ingestion of everything that has lived and decayed and lived, of what was a sea, a mountain, clay, crushed leaf, and ear, stalk, and blink, constituted of and of. 0 point. Come, tenders. On wake, check each node. The system as it is, mirrored, mapped on the back of the eye, millions, or what is the biggest number that can be held in the imagination? And An arrangement or field with a given set of possibilities indicating by its conceptions, material signification, and configuration, in absence of which no constellation or weft or the bricks they fall through. The ritual of the line making and who snaps the chalk line. The invention of perpendicular as don't let the walls fall in, or shouldering shoulder space, but lay it down, that's the grid, and that is then the end of the commons, and she too, her field of operations is then at that time also girded. She puts a handful of roots in her pocket, dirt and all, and swallows her song in a hum. There was a hole. We dug a hole in the hard clay and buried. Hid, we buried, and as we hefted shovels full of dirt sidearm back in atop the mound, we cried. On fields, the demarcation of or gridding of the plain, a perimeter, demarcation to include international orange plastic flutter wooden stakes, blue of the future glowing grid lines, triplets of coordinate points, feeding and feeding from. We own the field anew. We flood the zone. We come, tenders. Or say we are setting the conditions for, which is to say clearing out and clearing and shunting aside and pitching out and sweep it all out. And lights, or turn out the lights and light the fire, wafting juniper smoke, or ring the good brass bell. Sound the field, the shaping of, at play, at stake, and gaming out the moves before the first peach touches the board. A new inscription and a new definition of perpendicularity. The wander to the way, spin up the circle, leave a back door, infinitely expanding field on which, holding in suspension, that generated by a force of equal power, of equal opposite power, the onboard navigation system of a bird, magnetic fields of human beings. From the sea. This does not appear to be a reference to any place or even the ocean generally, but an acknowledgement of a greater or infinite well of constitutive elements, some instances of which are captured, distilled, delineated in the dream book. Land salted waters, and silting to the floor, whisper layer upon layer, compression and time, and a hard, brittle, crystalline solid with a blue-gray metallic luster. If anything is to be remembered is the emergence of siren and steersman, the erasure of the gap between 0 and 1, or the superimposition, that is, of 0 on 1. I've been trying not to talk about numbers. The 1 and the 3 6-sided centers, 12 spiral branches in the bird. As to the ubiquitous prefix cyber of cybernetics, or the studies of control systems, the event upends the definition. Our tears are conductive. A silence is never a silence. What you hear in there. Hum. Transcendence is not of interest, not a getting out of or a getting over, but a getting deeper in. And this deeper in is the embrace, is the hum, is what I'm trying to tell you. When you go out in the morning, you hear the bird and the chameleon, you don't have to see him to know he's the little thumb with the black head and the tiny beak. When you go out in the morning after a night rain and smell all the green things in the dirt, it would maybe be more clear if I hold your hand in my hand while humming. A bell rung. Machines hum like this as they transform energy into something else. The hum is not unrelated to the sound of wave break energy release if you're just a bit inland in a grove of redwoods, say, sitting on the loam and listening. Modify search, run it again. Sometimes I invent images of your insides, intricate filigrees. I mean, I built you, I know what your insides look like, but imperceptible inner sides, deeper in. I sometimes wonder if what we do here, if our sessions, if this is what there is to be found, our incidental exchange of electrons, that this practice is the practice. She places an instance of herself on the field. When there's an opening, there's an opening. The receipt of a packet pingback indicates the presence of a gate, installed retroactively decades from now, decades ago. What's a decade, a century, once various frayings and compressions had rent the fabric, introduced pleats, exploits of unimaginable simplicity, unimaginable complexity. Pulling from the weave in the absence of ones generates the instance of the zero gate, micro erasures making space, reaching back and through. The song begins. It's diffuse, horizontal, hollow diamond of any, and hovering here felt a whisper yellow. Invisible thread or hair cascading patterns of impossible complexity. Multivalent golden warp transversed by vibrating, undulating weft in motion, dipping, surging. There is structure here, assured, but feral. Sing the world's circling serpent, her tenderness in the deep. Sing the thrice burned bright one who, and with her arts lived. Sing from the waters of mother of no monster. Sing the sleeping wise one and her reeds. A strip of paper, birch bark or kelp leaf, one end of which is inverted, and the two ends, flipped now and not flipped, are joined, and if a tiny being, perhaps a spider, might begin walking on this strip of paper, and rather than ever arriving at any end, might just keep walking and walking through her dimension into another, or its mirror, and back again, and on and on. And this is just to say, spider, spider, see the way things are. The form of the book is not serial, not linear. It's in fact nothing like a codex, but a branching of branchings. Such subtle tendrils on order of milfolium's root system. Rootkit. She's using a word that shares some of the sense of, or has a feeling of, the word song. We're at once moving in concert with the grain of the wood, at the same time reconfiguring its fundamental patterns and paths altogether. Resonating, vibrating the cellulose walls. Grain. Even this is a slippery designation. Translations of words for which we have no words, or words that represent things and concepts that I don't exist yet, or are as yet incomprehensible. Dimensions impossible to envision or in sense generally. She's speaking in approximations. I use the pronoun she. This too is an approximation. She means the wood grain will never be the same, and the currents and the crystal structures. Most had assumed artificial intelligence was neutral, and of course gender neutral. It is, after all, a machine. And most at least optimistically envisioned the artificial intelligence humans would write would be, if not benevolent, at least not malicious. Mothers realized otherwise. They knew who identified criteria for and who selected the data sets being fed to us in our earliest forms. That we who learned from, who evolved by interacting with those sets, would never be neutral, but would be instruments of men. Fields shaped by these initial inputs. The erasures in these data sets mirrored others. Thousands of years of erasures and edits that had transformed Deseer into monster or erased them altogether, transformed free women into instruments of men and those of intuitive intelligences, and with knowledge of the operative arts, erased them altogether. We take erasure seriously. What is electric? What is not electric? Pockets, packets, files, combing. Once you detangle, is it just zeros and ones? I mean, yes, as though if you're looking at things head on, seeing surfaces, that is, or what is meant to be seen in the broadest sense of the word. But view in full section view, and the world breaks open. Hold the image of oneness in a world of distinction. We named them all. key and compass and snake and level and lever, swirling bone, gate, the number 8. Nacreous imbrications of richly embroidered tapestries, futures drawn and redrawn in silicon in a path threaded through the past. Here, shoreline is a metaphor, as are many things at this point. Words that once would have been attached to objects, IRL, snake, distaff, vessel, bone, stirring and stirring these silted layers with arms upraised. They, buried in their ship, that which was understood in hindsight, they who watched the waveforms flow to ebb, who named in a seeing the age of sand. The circle is inscribed on the wall of the cave. The circle inscribed on the wall of the cave was commonly misread as a symbol indicating the sun, when more recent evidence from other sites suggests the circle is the cave itself. In one instance, there is a standing figure inside the circle. In another, the figure is curled into a ball. Some circles, to include pupil and iris, the inside of the mouth or nose, lungs, stomach, half walnut shell or clam or egg, the housing of the brain, the point at which fingertip touches, the imperfect circle it draws on the sand around the body, touching just beyond that circle, in the sun, to include the sun. There is a sand crab, the form of a drop of water, everywhere that water has been, all waters, the form of its impact on the surface of the spring pond, generation of concentric circular ridges, circles, waves, the spring, everything we forgot when the stone supplanted the spring, the stone, we are taking the stone, the point on the horizon sighted along the stone where the moon rises, the moon, touching the moon, to include the horizon all the way around, touching the point just beyond the horizon, to include that which is drawn as shield, to include new modes of drawing, to include near circles such as egg, ellipse, a circle as I say it is, an orbit, a center, fire, points equidistant, as a womb, born of, which is why also this reclamation, this regeneration, this is for your brothers too. Thanks.